What else UFO? Okay, let's see if we're going live here. Personal accounts. Nah, it's not going to work. I can't figure out which one it is. I'm going to go to, let me change this and let's go instead to Facebook. We'll go live on Facebook. That I know how to do. That's the thing, when you assign stuff to people, people help you out, and then you sort of assign stuff and you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And then when they're not around, then it's like, good luck. Okay. Come on. Live on Facebook. Here we go. We're going live on Facebook. Go live. Preparing to live stream the meeting. And I think we're now live on Facebook. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. This is Grant Cameron, and I'm with an old friend of mine, Drew Banke, and he heard my conversation the other night with Jimmy Church. We talked before about his books. I'll let him sort of introduce himself and what he found interesting in the conversation. I think we're sort of on the same page in terms that Drew and I both feel that the story that we're looking at, the UFO story, or whatever you want to call it, UAP story, paranormal story, is representing something much more important, an aspect of reality. And if we understand what this is all about, the UFO thing, we'll understand how reality actually works. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to leave it up to Drew what he wants to bring up, and we'll I have no trouble talking, so we'll go from there. How you doing, Drew?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Grant. Good to see you, man. Good to talk to you. And yeah, I just was listening to your last conversation with Jimmy.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how the UFOs are a part of really the consciousness and evolution storyline. And we actually have to release our mind to think of something. The story is much larger than the UFO story. If we can just step outside our egos for a second and say, okay, the UFO story is a huge story. Yes, it is, no doubt. Everybody agrees. I agree. But it is a small part of a much larger story that's been unfolding since the beginning of time, and always going to be unfolding, and we're just at this precipice right now of evolutionary shift, I believe. And that's why I talk about in my books. I'm Perkins, so are you, and Find Your Inner Guru. I actually, the last time we spoke is a few years ago. We did 2 interviews close to each other, and I spoke about writing these books that I have published now. And actually, from one of your interviews, I met my co-author. My co-author was listening to what the interview that we did, and I can't remember if it was the first or second one, but at the end of it, I asked for anybody that would call to help writing.
Yeah. Wow.
I knew someone was listening, and I called out. I don't know if you remember that, but
No.
I got an email about a month later from Colleen Duran. She's a retired neuropsychologist, and she explained to me that she was doing a walkabout in India. And she's like in her mid 70s. And we're good friends now. We've wrote 2 books together. But at this time, she sent this email, and she said she was doing a walkabout in India in her 20s, and she had a vision that one day she was going to meet someone. She was going to help write books that was going to help shift the consciousness of humanity.
Wow.
And she was listening to Grant Cameron's interview with Drew Banke like 2 years ago. And at the end of it, I said, I can feel someone. I feel that there's someone listening right now, or someone that's connected to someone listening right now, that can help me write these books. And yeah, she reached out to me, and we started writing the first book. And about 45 days later, we had published it on Amazon and
Yeah.
did it with a shoestring, and
Yeah.
that's I'm Perfect and So Are You, and now it's in India and Australia and all over the world, and it's sharing my message, and well, not really my message, but our message of humanity, like
Yeah.
of what we really are,
You said she's a neuropsychologist. So and I ask you the same question, like, how does a neuropsychologist find this field, or how does she interpret the phenomena, and how did you get in the field?
Okay, back up for people that don't know me. I got in the field through my own healing in 2016 through ayahuasca. Stumbled upon the spiritual world, trying to find relief from PTSD, and stumbled on to a much larger story of myself. And I think at this point, a lot of people could put all the pieces together with what ayahuasca does. But
Well, let me
ayahuasca,
jump in with a question there, because that's something I've discussed with a former soldier who's working sort of in this field. Does ayahuasca, like for PTSD, that's a big problem in the retired military community. I mean, do you work with veterans? Can you talk a little bit about that with the association? Because PTSD is one of these things that they're spending like billions, $20 billion a year on, and they
yeah.
really haven't got. It's one thing that antidepressants just will not touch. So, what's your experience with it, and are you working with other veterans?
I'm working with veterans, so I'm a veteran. I did 2
Yeah,
tours in Iraq. I did 2005 in Baghdad, 2007 in Ramadi. I called artillery strikes, fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft strikes. I was a forward observer. So, there was a time that I had. This is just jumping back and sharing a story of Iraq. I had a C-130 Spectre gunship. Um,
yeah.
it's one of our tools in the United States military, and I was controlling it for 12 hours from the ground.
Wow.
I didn't get to shoot any like explosive charges. I just shot illumination rounds, but yeah, had that just give you an idea of what my job was in the military.
Yeah.
So coming back with tons of PTSD, and can you repeat the question one time?
Yeah, yeah. The PTSD and working with veterans. I mean,
Okay,
because
so
that's something that I think that should be brought out a little bit more. That veterans know there is this alternative.
sure. There's multiple different. Ayahuasca is just one of the doorways, or one of the answers, or one of the ways to help. Microdosing psilocybin, macrodosing psilocybin in a controlled environment, ketamine treatments, breathing techniques, Wim Hof. There's so many different ways to figure it out. Just so happens mine was ayahuasca, but ayahuasca is very she's a spirit I believe she's a spirit of Mother Earth. I believe she represents half of the energy of the entire universe. As she represents the feminine energy. I believe there's two energies that make up the universe outside of source, masculine and feminine. I believe that ayahuasca is one of the medicinal representations of that consciousness, or of that energy. So she's very nurturing, very helpful, and she's a healer. She's for anyone that's been in ceremony, they refer to as a she. There's definitely a spiritual aspect to it. It feels like a female. When it comes to veterans, on the neurological side, on the physical side of things, so we're visit both sides of these real quick. On the neurological side, there's neurons in your brain, there's neuron receptors, and in between there's electrical charges that send signals back and forth to each other. There's they're spread out all throughout your brain. There's tons of them. When you have PTSD and have extreme experiences, these neuron connectors start separating from each other to start to dull the storyline for yourself, so you can deal with the heightened trauma. So the neurons, the further the neurons go apart, the further these electrical charges have to go, the duller your experience is. So it's your body's like protective.
Mechanism.
It's protective thing. The these are deep implications on the spiritual side, energetic side happen. All this, I'll get into our visit that in just a second. But what the ayahuasca does, psilocybin, it brings those neuron connectors closer together. And over time, experiencing, so ayahuasca lets you experience things. And I know you've talked about your experience at John Hopkins, or did you have experience at John Hopkins?
No, I did 25 sessions on my own, high dose sessions, but
Okay,
but I used the John Hopkins protocols.
okay, so that's what you're talking about. You're using their protocols.
Protocols, yeah.
So you're tracking what I'm talking about right now, like with the whole, it lets you experience things, but without the weighted down of the emotional side of it. You get to experience and just and learn the lesson without all the emotional attachment that happened in the physical. Say, for instance, something happened to me in Iraq, and I would go through it in ayahuasca. I would go through it, and I would see how that connected to the rest of my storyline. I would see the whole grid pattern of existence of Drew and why that needed to happen. But I was able to process it because it would be without the emotional attachment that I have in ego from it. And then I was able to release it. So that's what happens in ayahuasca. Each time you do that, these neurons start coming closer together, and then you start having you start living more, you start experiencing more, you start seeing ships more, you start feeling more, you start being more intuitive, you start getting more number sequences, this, that, and the other. And in a nutshell, that's what it does. That's what ayahuasca does. For veterans in particular, I think that we have a warrior archetype that's ingrained in our ego, in our being. And I think that's has a large part to do with what we're, a lot of us are becoming messengers of this, because we're not afraid to, the veteran and the military gave us confidence, and now it changed our perspective to spread this other message, to be the real warriors of light, or whatever you want to, the million of different storylines of what we are. But I think that's why I really honestly, I really think that's why veterans are being targeted, Grant, because not targeted so much, but we signed up for it. It's, you go through QHHT, you start to learn that this has all been signed up, and on a much larger scale that we probably won't ever understand in physical form, that we signed up for this experience. And I really think that the warrior archetype bleeds over when we perceive the world as much smaller in the 3D. We go to the military because that drive inside us is going to serve, and we hit this barrier, but it's a false barrier. And once that barrier is broken, then we're able to see what our real mission is.
Yeah, I think that was one of the points I was trying to bring up on Jimmy Church, was this idea that usually we see it as a random world, that this is happening to us, when in fact it's happening for us, that we've we're projecting this world for ourselves, we've signed up to it, and that as long as we see ourselves as victims, we're dead in the water. You have to take responsibility for what's actually going on before you can change anything, and you have to realize this may not be random. You may be part of what you're talking about here.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's I think it's random, and I think it's a design that but I think the design is so far past our understanding that you just have to let go of understanding and just accept it. Because I think you hit one of the words, a trigger word you said, victim. I think that's a big problem with us too, in society right now, the victim mentality. You're not none of this stuff happened to me in Iraq. I was adopted at birth. Like I had to release all that victim, all those labels of victim. Oh, I was a victim because I was adopted. I was a victim because they didn't tell me out until I was 18. I'm a victim because I went through a divorce. I was a victim. I had to release each one of them. And once you start going down, once you get to a certain point, you start to realize I'm not a victim at all. I never was, ever. And all those thousands of ones that you've been digging through one by one in the ceremony. I'm sure you went through this. I don't know if how it works in the John Hopkins things, but in a traditional medicine ceremony, it's really just one trauma they visit, or maybe two at the most, but it's not they're not going to go and solve it all for you. and I say they,
Yeah.
it's you, but
Yeah.
you're not going to solve it all in one shot. And event, because really you have to solve it outside the ceremony. You have to outside the medicine ceremony, you have to come to full balance and alignment for it to be
Yeah.
for it to fully stick. The
Yeah.
ceremony,
Yeah, they would call it integration. Unless you integrate, it's a waste of time. You have
yeah,
to integrate those into
integration
your
is
life.
key. And all
Yeah.
these all the ceremonies, uh dream regression,
Yeah.
even QHHT, all of it, all of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just a moment. It's a paradigm shift. That's what a UFO sighting or incident, like I write about in my first book, the face-to-face contact in Chaco Canyon.
Yeah.
That was a paradigm shift. Was it real? Did it actually physically happen? For me, it was real.
Give
It,
people a
it,
thumbnail. Give people a thumbnail of what the encounter was.
okay, so my first wedding anniversary, me and my wife went to Chaco Canyon to hike the canyon, look at petroglyphs. I'm addicted to petroglyphs. And we hiked the canyon all day. And at the end of the day, I sung a few prayer songs. I'm a sun dancer, pipe cure, medicine man, this, that, and the other, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I pulled out my drum. I sung a few prayer songs, Native American prayer songs, to the canyon, just thanking them for the day and thanking for being there. Unknowingly, I don't know if that was part of like what happened later, but that gratitude that I gave the canyon, I believe it was received, and it made what happened later on this night. We left there. It was and if you're not familiar with the Four Corners area, Chaco Canyon area, there's no hotels out there, so you have to go drive a ways, like to get, if you want to stay at a hotel or anything like that. Chaco Canyon, Four Corners, all that area. So we went back to Cortez, Colorado. We rented Airbnb there. We went out to we left there at sundown. We drove back as like an hour and a half drive back to Cortez, Colorado, which is really close to the Four Corners area of the United States. And we went out to dinner, went to bed and eventually went to bed. And that night I woke up and I was still smoking tobacco at the time. I've quit since then, but I was smoking tobacco at the time, and I woke up about 2:30, somewhere around there, with my ears just ringing, like, hair staying up back your neck. So one of those things that's like, you almost feel like someone's in the like inside the house with you, like another
Yeah.
person's in the house. All my senses are going off. So I go outside to have a few puffs of tobacco and calm down on the back porch. The back porch is dark. There's just a deck back there. It's a small deck, and then it goes to grass, a couple trees, large trees, but pitch dark. I walk out there, light the tobacco, and as soon as I step out the door, I feel a presence standing out there, but I don't see anybody. I just kind of do a quick glance that there's no one out there, and I take a few more steps and light the tobacco, and this sense just within the 2 or 3 seconds that's transpired for me walking out the door from lighting this tobacco, I'm almost vomiting. Like, I feel a vibration coming from the center, maybe my solar plexus chakra area,
Okay.
somewhere around there, and just pulsating out, and just making me uncomfortable. And it actually made almost had to vomit. I coughed up some phlegm and I spit it into the this it's a weird part of the whole story, but I have to say it. But I spit the phlegm into the yard, leaned
Yeah.
forward, and when I did, I saw 2 feet standing right beside me, facing the same way mine did. They were
Yeah.
black. I followed them up, and it's a shadow being that's
Yeah.
standing there. And I thought I thought it was a shadow. I because it turns with me and everything. I turn around and look, and there's no street lights behind me. I'm trying to, my mind's just grasping for like reality,
Yeah.
something to hold on to. And I turn back around to it, and its eyes open up, and there's stars, just stars and galaxies like
Wow.
the whole eternity of existence is inside its eyes. And it's just like a window. It's almost like I'm on a spaceship, and the veils are being lifted up on my spaceship, and So my consciousness kind of jumps in in the eyes, and I start traveling and go into this timeless space. I feel like, you know, there's so much that I remember and so much that I don't about it. I can't really articulate what I felt in those moments, but I was just flying through space, and I
Wow.
was just getting downloaded, just buzzing, just extreme buzzing. I felt like the crescendo of a medicine ceremony when your body just uh feels like it's going haywire, but there's also that peace about it as well. That's kind of what I was feeling. Um, I come back, uh, within a few moments, my physical self realizes what happens. I snap back into my body. I'm standing there looking at myself, and I just get this, like I'm looking at a mirror thing, and I just take off inside. My ego self is just freaked out. I turn around and shut the door, and then I'm thinking, oh my God, it doesn't matter if I shut the door. That this thing could probably just walk through the wall. Like, what
Yeah,
am I
yeah.
doing? Like, but I feel like locking the door is gonna do something. I go and wake up my wife. I'm walking around the house like the Airbnb for like the next 45 minutes, sweating. I'm sweating right now talking about it actually, but um, yeah, it's probably one of the most profound experiences of my life. Um, that moment. It faded after eventually went to sleep that night after calming down, and had dreams. I can't recall what the dreams were, but my dreams were really really intense, for the next couple days. And then it just subsided, and like almost forgot about it. And not forgot about it, but it wasn't the first thing that in my mind when I woke up in the morning after a few days. And about a week later, I had a dream where I find myself just standing in this backyard, and I recognize the backyard, and I turn around, and I heard a door open up, and I see this Drew walk
Yeah.
out, and I'm standing there as the other being, and I go through the whole experience from the other viewpoint. And that's when I learned multidimensionality by location, and not through an idea. I didn't read it in a book. I didn't have an idea of it. I didn't have a vision. I learned it through experience. I learned because I was able, through the dream space, I was able to experience the ET or shadow self, mirror self of me in that moment. And I got to go through the same experience again. So
Wow.
that's in the first book.
And you hold up the book. You got it behind you there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, hold up. This is where okay.
It's on Amazon or sacredjourneyswithin.com. If you order it from sacredjourneyswithin.com, it'd be autographed. And I meditate with each book when that happens, and I give a particular message to each person. So,
Wow. Wow.
but
That's fascinating because I'm just doing finished a book on the people who've flown the craft. And basically you get that idea. Even John Ramirez, if you know John Ramirez, the high level analyst from the CIA, talks about that. He said, I don't think I'm in a craft when I'm going to this ice planet he talks about. And that's the whole deal. It's how do you move from one place to another? It's all in the mind. We think it's this physical thing. We're going through time and space, and it's in your consciousness. So, the whole idea is everything's within you, and there is no out there. And that's where it really gets really weird, where unless you've been looking at it and you've had experiences like you and other people, you think that's not totally crazy, but it starts to make sense. That's how they can move around, is because there is no out there. It's all sort of, when you have your experience, like when you saw it through the other perspective, that's the same thing. It's like you see your mirror self, or almost the idea that there's one guy I'm just listening to his podcast where he's talking about his experience where he's there and then he's playing one of the Beatles songs. He's playing it on guitar, and he said, here's his voice and says, turn around, look behind you. And he looks behind him and there's this giant void. And then he goes, oh, that must be the void. That's the nothingness. And he turns around and he sees that reality has moved a couple of feet in front of him, and he suddenly sees it's a screen. Like reality's a screen, and then he turns behind him and the void, and then he comes and he says it's like your face is against the screen and you can't see. You're watching a projection of your awareness, and that it's this thing where everything sort of falls apart in terms of what people think is really real. And that's where I say, get past the UFO thing. You're not even beginning to touch what may be actually going on here.
Man, it's just a touching the surface, man, with the UFOs. The UFOs is designed for a paradigm shift, and those paradigm shift may come in the form of a near-death experience. It might come in the form of an ayahuasca ceremony. It might come in the form of X amount of sessions with the John Hopkins protocol with psilocybin. All these or just a spontaneous paradigm shift of understanding. Maybe listen to a podcast of Grant Cameron or Jimmy Church or anybody, you know.
Yeah.
The paradigm shift is waiting for you to accept it. And it's to accept that moment, and to accept that moment of letting go, because what is a paradigm shift? It's a moment that everything doesn't make sense, and you have to start to accept a different reality. I mean, we're always evolving. That evolution is always taking place, and the UFO storyline has evolved, and it's really starting to show us that it's really about consciousness, because you know, these experiences that people have through the mirror effect. You know, what I talk about a lot, and I haven't wrote about this yet, but it's the mirror effect of the universe we use to teach us, and because there's only one of us. There's only one of us. I'm looking at another aspect of myself right now. He's setting up in Canada. The space between us is an illusion. The time that's eclipsing right now during this conversation is an illusion, and we're just expanding right now, me and you, and it's spreading out to whoever's listening on Facebook and whoever listening in the future, and this, that, and the on.
You're right.
There's only one of us. There's only one consciousness, and we're all sharing it. Have you heard the Ram Dass talk about his experience in the Mid-America Hotel in Kansas? In Salina,
it doesn't ring a bell. I've listened to him a lot, but I'm not sure if I heard that experience.
Write that one down. It's experience in Salina, Kansas, Mid-America Hotel. Ram Dass, he talks about how he was trying to commit suicide with LSD, and he had put pictures all over the wall, or questions. So no matter where he was looking at when he took his last breath, the last thing he would see in this existence was a question. He was going to carry that to the other side. He had a picture of his guru on the TV, with everything blocked out, so it looked like everything on the TV on, so it looked like everything that was happening was coming out of his TV, his guru's head. His guru passed away, and he was asking permission to die. Wow. He talks about it's you know, it hits home for a lot of people. A lot of people has had this oneness experience, but they're afraid to talk about it because they might have seen themselves as Jesus or all these other things, and they're afraid to talk about it. But if people listen to this Ram Dass talk about it, it really opens up, because he talks about how his breath was slowing, and he went into the space between two thoughts, and there was an infinite amount of space in that space, and he stayed there. Wow. And in that moment, he decided to come back, and when he come back, he realized that he could recreate the universe however he wanted. Wow. And he brought that back. I think a lot of people can, if they know that that's okay to know that and say that and feel that, I think we can move forward with like this whole process. We definitely need to let go of the nuts and bolts UFOs. Like how many videos, how many times is the government, how many stories do they have to release that shows us that there's craft like that question has been answered so many times, Grant, so many times. The next question is, who are they and what do they want? They are you. They're a future version of yourself. Greer had it dead on the money, and so does tons of other people. And what do they want? If it's you, you're sitting here way in the future, coming back and seeing another part of yourself go through this experience. And it's a storyline to help us expand our consciousness and evolution. But you know, we have to say they and this, that, and the other just so we can process it. But really, it's just all you.
Yeah, that's another big obstacle people have, is they always want to do the separation. There's me and there's you and there's all this kind of stuff. And we talk in I's and me's, and the ego is talking. And in the end, when you break it all down, there is only one thing. And that's why I've started to say, and people get offended by the idea that God did not create the heaven and the earth. God created the sparks of the divine, and we created the heavens and the earth because it's all made out of consciousness. We're creating it as we go along.
The yin and the
And
yang.
and we would go back to the old idea. We always want to go back to the old idea that everything is physical, and then they stuck in a brain, and then this consciousness suddenly popped out, and we can take the consciousness and put it wherever we want and stuff like that. And it's this idea that consciousness is primary, which we're starting to, I guess we're starting to get to now, because we're getting a lot of the simulated universe theories and stuff where scientists are talking about this. So we don't sound as crazy as we used to sound. It's almost like we're getting vindication from the mainstream community, and that I think is what's going to move the people on the street, because they're not going to listen to you and I. But you know, if some guy from MIT says it's a simulated universe and it's all an illusion, and you're creating this thing, then they go, what, and then they start to actually listen.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. People that the people that have credit, you know, and this is not directed at Lou or anybody else or any of this is not directed at anybody personally, but the credit that you get when you have one of the alphabet,
Yeah.
if you have history in one of the alphabet agencies, the 3-letter alphabet agencies, if you have history in that, it's automatic, gives you credit. But
Yeah.
and then we talk, the next sentence we talk about conspiracy and how the government, has been lying to us since Roswell, and it says before, and blah 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 and blah. But we still give credit to the alphabet letter. It's you have to let go of all that, because that's part of what's holding people back too, because they're and because they give credit to that stuff, man. You have to feel it with your heart, like, what is the truth? And I think we're at the precipice that we have to move past that. The nuts
Yeah.
and bolts, and all the and not feeling with your heart, and processing this whole phenomenon with your brain
Yeah.
has to take a back seat, and you have to start processing it with your heart, intuition, and really what you're feeling, because that's what we're going in. That's the point of evolution. We're moving outside. We're going inside to break outside of
Yeah.
ourselves, and
Yeah.
that's really what's happening.
Yeah, that goes back to this victim thing, that if you look at the 3-letter agencies or the military, it's all, I call it the national insecurity. It's like we got now it's going to be $815 billion. I mean, more weapons than all the other countries combined, and still totally in fear. And it's this whole idea of there's all these enemies out there, different colors and different religions, and they're all out to get us. And it's that victim mentality that just it creates fear. And as the Chandler Paul Selleck says, all fear does is create more fear. If in any decision you make in fear, take a look at where it got you, just to gather more fear. And so we're in this vicious cycle of being victims and thinking the answer is out there, or that we have to protect ourselves. And I guess it's a matter of time. It's like I always say, we've got eternity to figure it out. And it doesn't really matter whether we convince anybody now, because I always bring up Stanton Friedman, how he, for 61 years, he fought all the big skeptics. And I looked at his files. He didn't convince anybody of anything. And that was the whole deal. It's because that's why they abduct young children, or have near-death experiences with young children, is you're old enough to remember, but you're not old enough to be influenced. That once you're 7 years old, they don't want anything to do with you, because you got all these ideas that have been put in your head by your church or your school or your parents, or all that, on TV and stuff like that. And you become this sort of blocked off. And so young children are open and they come through, but it's very hard for people to shut that off, myself included, where you got to shut that ego off and go to the quietness and realize what's actually going on.
Yeah, this whole lesson, it's designed to take your, to allow you to accept your ego, as as part of this process. People say, oh, you got to bash your ego, you got to kill your ego. really you have to learn to live with your ego. You have to learn to live in balance of the two energies and bring them in balance within yourself. And then, they're your life is eternal no matter what, because there's no start stop, like. And I know, not to get in detail, but I know we spoke before the show. But last year, Grant, over the past 2 years, really, I have been wallowing in a lesson of grief over and over and over. I've lost a sister-in-law, I've lost two nephews, and
Wow.
I lost a brother-in-law. So my wife lost both her siblings. One was right before Christmas, and one was actually right around the time we spoke was my sister-in-law. I was in Ohio, I think, for one of our conversations, at my mother-in-law's house.
Yeah.
Anyways, then I had two nephews last year, so I lost three people very close to me last year. And being going through it from a spiritual perspective was, uh it was, I found a lot of gifts in it, and that's the only way I was able to. That was one of the reasons I was able to process it and get through it. I was able to really let go and actually see where the experiences was. My brother-in-law actually officiated his funeral, and that was very hard. He come out here to Colorado, lived with us. He's done ceremony with us and everything, and he just passed away in his sleep,
Wow.
on December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas.
Wow.
And this just happened this last Christmas,
Wow.
and then my son come on 111, and got to see that. That was a really interesting thing to see, the contrast between life and death within 20 days of someone
Yeah.
really close to you. And the I got a real gift out of that, Grant. I saw the same feeling that was deep, deep, deep in my heart, without all the other emotions and everything. It was almost the same, but it felt like the same vibration.
Yeah.
Because when someone passes, you really, you do like, you pass through, you remember things that, you remember who they are, and experiences flash, you go through the grief process.
Yeah.
And that love is just so pure in your heart when you go through that grief process. It's a beautiful, actually. And
Yeah.
it's when my new son was born, Hawk, on 111.
Yeah.
That was it was almost the same thing. It was that deep, deep, like the center of your being, like pulsating, and I learn a lot through the grief. And I think a lot of people listening, and a lot of the collective of this world, is going through that in some way, form, or another. And I've asked people to come, like, I agreed, like, my nephew Blake, he read my first book, talked about UFOs, real interested in all that stuff, paranormal. Ever since he was a kid. He was only 28 years old, and took his own life. He was a veteran too. He was going through a divorce, got overloaded, and
Yeah.
emotionally. But he come to me. I went out, sat in the desert, lit a fire, and I sat there all night, found a little cave, and I sat there all night, and I asked him to come, and he come.
Wow.
And showed me that, you know further convinced me that, it's all real, and my other nephew, and it's all happened through dreams or visions or this, that, and the other. But I think if we accept, you know just like I preach about, every moment is here for a meaning. Like, every moment is connected to the next moment. Like when you spoke on Jimmy, like, talk about, oh, we got to let go of the nuts and bolts UFOs, and really look, stop looking at the shiny things, and look at what's
Yeah.
really going on. That triggered me, man, to really reach out. We've been talking back and forth
Yeah.
here and there over the past couple of years about doing another show together.
Yeah.
But this was like, hey, Grant, and I'm like, oh, we got to do we got to do this, man.
Yeah.
I feel bloated with information,
Yeah.
and we have to talk on this. And I'm glad that
I'm
we
glad we did.
took this time to
You
get
wanted
into.
to talk about some feathers. Let's go there with it.
Yeah. So not gonna show them or anything, but these are feathers that I've done ceremony with. People that's listened to a bunch of my podcasts and read the books or whatever, and knows anything about me, it knows I Sundance. I had a near-death experience in my third year of the Sundance where I was gone for 5 to 7 minutes without a pulse or respiration, and I come back and recalled everything that happened in those 5 to 7 minutes, or verbatim, and I was able to actually tell, but I could actually recall what was being done. And I did that, and I actually prophesied something that at the time was taken very with a grain of, with a grain of salt. I set up out of that moment, and one of the first things I said is, because I just got out of this vision, I had this meeting like in the spiritual world with these native elders that's been passed for a very long time, and they told me that I was supposed to go back into form with the message that the Sundance was over and the time of physical sacrifice in the form of ceremony was over, and we needed to accept a more we need to honor ourselves more and be more of a comfortable way of prayer. And we need, and they told me that the sun, and the proof of this, they said you will not dance again. The Sundance will not happen again.
Wow.
So this is 2019. I had my near death the second day of the Sundance, and I had to stop. And we didn't Sundance in 2020 because of COVID. We didn't Sundance in 2021 because of COVID. And I think they've already canceled one of the ceremonies that's connected around it. So I'm pretty sure that they're gonna cancel it again. So, I've come to realization, like just from proxy, I'm some type of prophet, but it's not a title for me. It's just for me to really trust what I'm talking about and spread it like I'm doing now, like with reckless abandon, and know that I'm talking the truth. And if it sounds weird to you might need to just check with yourself, and really feel what I'm saying. So the feathers, I wear 2 feathers in a small headdress. It's called a crown, and it was made out of sage wrapped in red fabric, and there's 2 feathers sticking out. Won't go into where the feathers are from or anything, but they're sacred bird feathers.
Yeah.
And those feathers now have an electrical charge. So when you hold the feathers close together, and this is nothing I could show you on film, and this is something I do when I meet people in person. I want to show them that the evolution has already taken place, and it wasn't really never a point in time. It's an acceptance of us personally. It's a personal evolution, and it's a collective evolution that we're going through right now. And when we accept that the universes are, this 5D, we're living in 5D right now, and all this magic is available. All we have to do is accept it. Some very magical things can happen. So I really feel that these feathers are proof that we're already here. We don't have to wait on disclosure or anything like that. That story for me, disclosure is way in the back of my storyline. Like disclosure, I don't need anyone else to tell me that any of this phenomenon is real or fake, because it's neither.
Yeah.
It just is, and it's taught me lessons. We spoke before the show about how I vet people that and they talk to me about UFO experiences. I stop them. I won't stop them. I let them share some of their story, but at a certain point, I ask them, what is the message or lesson that you got from that experience? And if you don't have a message or lesson from a UFO experience, chances, it didn't happen. You're really making it up, because ultimately it's about your mind. Your mind is projecting your consciousness and everything, whether it's with you or a collective in a C5 or something like that. You're projecting, like almost like a movie, through your consciousness, something to visualize, so your paradigm can break, so you can go into it, so you can keep evolving, where think of your mind as an egg that keeps cracking, reforming, cracking, reforming, but the contents inside change a little bit each time. And that's in a sense, that's kind of what's happening to us until the egg just cracks and we just start, and it just flows back into the earth and becomes one with the ocean. You know, we need to recognize that we're a drop, but we're also the ocean. And we don't have to identify with either. We're somewhere in between the two.
Wow. And what do you think the main message they want? Do you think it's the oneness message? Do you think it's
That's the only message that there is.
Yeah.
The acceptance of one consciousness and still be on two legs. That's the trifecta of the evolution of what we're trying to accomplish. I
Give me
believe.
that again.
The acceptance of one consciousness, of being source, of really source looking through your eyes, but you also being Drew and Grant. But
okay.
So it's the trifecta of existence of between oneness and walking on two legs.
Oh, cool. I've never heard of that expressed that way. It's a good way to put it. And that's what you see if you start breaking down the messages, it all comes back to that. It's people tell it in different ways, different analogies and stuff. And when you start to understand that, that we're all cells in a body and that we're all, doing different things or whatever. But the illusion or the idea of separateness is so overwhelming that you just keep falling back into the illusion all the time.
Yeah, it's a much easier existence, and sometimes I'm sure a lot of people can sympathize with this. Through the waking journey, you go back and forth whether you want to continue with it or not. It's like, can I just go back and watch hockey or what, and really be into hockey, or really be into football. But no, it's you can still watch it maybe, and eventually it just fades away and you're just consumed with whatever paradigm that broke you, whether it be a medicine ceremony or a UFO or whatever. But I don't know why or how. It's not my point to question why I've had so many different aspects of it. I think it's so I can report on it and say that they're all the same. Like all these different spaces, they're the same. Like they have the same energy when you get past all the storyline, when you get to the oneness and have the bodhisattva or oneness consciousness moment. I had that spontaneously in Florida one time. I write about, and that's it's amazing, but you have to be able to articulate, and you have to be able to put it, bring that back and tell people about it. And it's not so much to boast about it, it's about like opening up the conversation so people can start to process their own visions and dreams and experiences that they had, because there's a lot of people out there that don't want to talk about it because they feel like they're the only one. And I feel like a lot of my position in this world right now is to speak on this openly and candidly and honestly, and with a lot of reverence with it.
Yeah, it's the old idea: to whom much is given, much is expected. So what profit the man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? So once you've got the thing, like people just make that joke all the time where they would say, "Oh, this guy quit. He had it. He's not doing UFOs anymore. He's fed up or whatever." I go, no, don't worry. He's back. He'll be back. Nobody leaves. It's like once the filter has been ripped, it's almost like you're a sort of a newcomer to the business. It's like once you have that first experience, it starts to multiply. It's like another experience. It's almost like it rips something, and you have more and more experiences as you go along, and you may have gone your whole life without anything.
Yeah, you can't forget once one of the things that we talk about, like first timers coming to the ayahuasca ceremony, just know that you're walking through a threshold that you're not going to be able to come back through. Like once you see this, you're not going to be able to once you see the truth, you can't undo it. Maybe when you pass and you reincarnate into another being, maybe you'll forget about it then, or maybe you won't. But in this lifetime, you will not forget about the truth. Like you just will not. It will not happen. And another thing, I was talking I got an interview coming out that's going to be published with Heidi Hollis from Coast to Coast.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I did an interview with her a week or so ago. It'll be out. I think the April 22nd is the tentative date. I'm going to update everybody when I get the notice from her. It's going to be a good one. But we talked about, have you ever heard of the Crystal City, or like a crystal planet?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So this is a place that's actually there in a consciousness field that has been visited by a lot of different people, and they all describe it very, very similarly. So it's almost like the Akashic records. It's
So give me an idea, because I have the one woman who led me to the idea that you're flying the ship was actually from Phoenix, and she was in her 70s, and that's when she said to me, "Oh, I was flying the ship," and I said, "You are what?" I was going to throw her out of the house. I was just, "Come on, you're flying the ship. Come on. Why would they let a woman fly the ship?" And it was that kind of thing, you know. And then she talked about going to the Crystal City. So tell me, she said it was her favorite place. So describe what you're hearing about it.
Well, there's a crystal city, and then there's a crystal planet, or an altar planet.
Okay.
The altar planet is what I've seen it, and when I saw it, I was like, holy, like this is amazing. It's a planet that's made out of geometric crystals, basically, and it's kind of hollow,
Okay.
but it's all interlocking crystals that come down, and it comes down to a center point. And when you get to that center point, I think that's like Source's chamber, or something. I think that's Source's chamber, and it's it's very weird because I know that the place is not actually there, but there's been so many people that has agreed upon it, has manifested, and now it's actual place in
Yeah.
an existence somewhere, like in some type of consciousness field, because there's thousands of people, if not more, that's been to this place. They all describe it the same way. And I believe it's, it's the altar for the universe. It's the center of the universe. The Crystal City, me and Heidi talked about as well. Heidi Hollis, we talked about as well. She's been there. I haven't been there personally, but it's an Akashic record type of thing, where it almost looks like a physical place, like a 3D place where people walk, that you go there and people are walking around, and they look a little different than here, but it's a place, it's like a mystery school place, but it's in it's in the consciousness field. I haven't been there personally, so I can't personally report on this, but I do know that this place has been visited by this another place that has been agreed upon. I know 3 places in the consciousness field that's been agreed upon by people and is manifested in a non-physical location. Akashic
Yeah.
records, the Crystal City, and the Crystal Planet.
Yeah. Well, that would make sense. If everything's made out of consciousness, you're manifesting that thing. So people agree
Amazing.
to, same as you and I agree to manifest what we're seeing. We think it's a world out there, but as John Wheeler, the physicist, said, there's no out there. And everybody always tries to dance around what he was actually saying. And he said it's a participatory universe. The idea that nothing comes into the physical realm until it's observed. That whole idea that we are actually creating the physical, and the physical is just a different vibration, but it's still consciousness. Or my download in 2017, where they said, is the world made out of nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if it's made out of consciousness, that's a whole different world with different rules.
Yeah.
And they're sort of pointing it out.
The rules change, man. Reminds me of something Dolores Cannon said one time, and she put it so eloquently. And it didn't make sense at the time when I heard this. Is a few years ago, when I was going through my process and like trying to figure out if this was real, and like grasping for straws.
Yeah.
She said all these things. She would do her speeches, and she would go and talk about all these different regressions that she had with people, and all these different realizations that's been 1,000 people come to, and then she'll come to a realization through repetitiveness, basically. But she said, don't get caught up on all this food stuff. But she didn't go any further to like what we should concentrate on. It
Yeah.
makes sense now what she was talking about, because don't try to figure out like why all this stuff happens. You're going because you're going to get caught up in the storyline and you're going to get derailed on what it is. This is a point in our lives we need to close our eyes and start to trust a different sense of ourselves, of what's really going on. It's a we keep hammering, it's about consciousness, 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 but what does that look like? It that the consciousness aspect is not going to be answered by trying to figure out how many triangle sightings happened in between the years of 1950 and 1985, or or whatever. It's not going to be answered from that. It's going to be answered from the experience of seeing the actual ship, or seeing an actual angel. Like all these things are real and fake all at the same time. They're just as real as you want to believe. And until you give it credence, like if you don't believe in UFOs, chances, you're not gonna, you might have an experience, an isolated experience, but it's going to be spontaneous. It's not going to be planned. It's going to be a time when you're driving down the road, listening to music or relaxing and start to daydream. Like all of us can remember, but like I can remember when I was a kid, I used to get in trouble all the time because daydreaming. Now looking back, I was traveling before I was boxed in. The whole government and everything put me in a box, and I was in a box from probably 10 until 10 years old, until 2016, till I was 36, till ayahuasca opened that box and let me see really what was going on again. Man, I ain't never going back in, Grant. I ain't never going back in.
So that's where I call it the theory of wow. I say if you actually look at what's actually going on, whether it's crop circles or calculations or UFO sightings, it's just they want you to go wow and shatter your paradigm, and then you spend the rest of your life going like, what was that? Because you can ask somebody, when did you see your UFO? It was Monday, 1966, February the 12th, and I think exactly. It's never left them, and that's all it's doing is it's like, or I'll say to people when they have a UFO sighting, so what was it doing? And they'll go, wasn't doing anything. I said, do you think it wanted you to see it? Yeah, maybe. And it's like, well, it wasn't doing anything. So what do you think? You think it was there by accident? And it shatters people. It sort of just, because that's the way we do it. We sort of we do it like the military. We go into countries and say, we're here to bring you freedom and democracy, Jesus and McDonald's. Next thing you know, they're pointing guns at us and tell us to leave. And they're not doing that. They come in and it's indirect. They're forcing you to go within yourself to get the answer. They're not giving you the answer. They just make you do it, and you're trying to figure out the puzzle. But they, first of all, they got to get you interested, and they do it with this weird stuff, and you're trying to figure out what is going on here. Like,
so would you this is a question for you, Grant.
Yeah.
Would you consider, people talk about visions that they have in ceremonies, and shared visions. I'm sure you've heard about shared visions in ceremonies.
Yeah.
Would a CE5, would you label that as a shared vision?
Sometimes, but sometimes not. If you look at Mark Sims' experience, he was in a CE5 event, and if you know his story, where the being came and was inside him for 13 days or whatever, gave him this whole download of how the universe works and all this kind of stuff. But he was there and he was pretty skeptical about it. And this object appeared. There was all these people sitting in the CE5 with Stephen Greer. And so my first question, I said, what was it doing? And he said, well, it wasn't doing anything. It was just sitting there, this light. And I said, so who could see it? Did everybody see it? And he said, no, not really. Just me and maybe somebody beside me. I think I'm the only one that saw it. And then he went to his room, and that's where he was so overwhelmed with the thing. Then he did this sort of CE5 initiative in his room. And that's when the being appeared in the room and was with him for 13 days. So yeah, you can have the shared, what I see is you're setting a stage. So if you're doing a ceremony, I did a book called Contact Modalities where I look at all these different things, and drumming and dancing is one of the things where you go into this, you're quieting the left brain, you're going into an altered state through whatever dancing or drumming or what your protocols are. The same as in a CE5, you're doing a lot of meditation and oming, and same as Mission Rama does the same thing, where you put yourself in this state. So you can all go into the state where you have a situation like Shasta in 2020, where you have these 8 people at a birthday party and in the middle of the field, and suddenly they're levitated into the air, and these beings come. And according to one guy, there was as many beings as there was trees in the forest. and they were oming, and they were up, and these beings are around them, these energy beings and stuff like that. So you can have the multiple, or the shared, but everybody's in the field. So you can get in the field yourself, or you can get the whole group in the field, and you'll have like Mission Rama situations where the leader will say, nothing's going to happen because the people aren't ready. There's people with lasers, and they're shooting lasers into the sky, and talking and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You see that at C5. It's like you're saying, the daydreaming. You got to get into that altered state. You got to shut down the little voice, and whether it's through drumming, dancing, meditation, oming, whatever it is, quietness, and then it opens up, and you can hear the signal because there's no noise there.
The space between thought.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what comes to me as critically important. That's Deepak Chopra, the space between thought, and that everything is an activity inside consciousness, which is another thing that sort of blows people away. They just can't figure it out. That it's a verb. There are no nouns. There are no ships, this, that, whatever. It's all a verb. It's all part of consciousness. It's all moving. It's all vibrating. So it's all this one thing, but it takes people a while. And I have some empathy for people, because I would say, and maybe you would have to agree with me, if you had not had your experience, you might be just as stupid, and I might be just as stupid as the rest of them. It's the experience that changes you, or you go like, wow, this is because I remember when I saw it, when I had my sighting, this thing was going on for quite a few months before I went out there to this small town that was seeing these UFOs. The only reason I went was because everybody else was seeing it. And I went, instead of driving around the city, let's go out and see what they're looking at. And I had no expectation of seeing it. And I remember when I first saw it, in my head, I went, holy shit, this is real. I couldn't believe it. Because there's no doubt when I saw it, I went, I can't believe it. Was like I won the lottery. Like I never thought I bought the lottery ticket. You know you're not going to win, but it's like I won the lottery. Like there's actually, I saw something.
That's exactly what it feels like, the lottery, when the very first time when you have one that's really, really, like, no doubt, like,
yeah. And then you try to explain it to other people, and you see their eyes roll back, and then you realize, like, they're just not ready. It's not and almost the idea between, like, a lot of scientists will say, we explained it. And I said, no, you didn't. You described it. Science describes stuff. It doesn't explain anything. And it's the only, and they'll say, I know, you just believe. And it's like, no, I had the experience. You didn't have the experience. You're the one that believes. And if you have the experience,
yeah,
and that's the difference between believing and knowing. It's who's had the experience.
Yeah, it's not even, that's why I don't claim to be a researcher or anything like that. I guess I would say I'm an experiencer, but I'm just a being that has found, like, true sovereignty, and I'm trying to help people find that in themselves, and all the good ones always push you back inside. It's not outside, it's inside, 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 inside. All that being said, like, did I ever tell you the mothership contact in the desert in 2019?
No,
Did I tell that?
you might have, but I don't recall.
Oh man. So this is a third night of contact at the desert 2019 in India Wells, California. Me and my wife we don't like to stay in hotels, so it's almost every story you hear about me, like, traveling somewhere, is like there's gonna be an Airbnb in the storyline.
Yeah.
So we're at an Airbnb outside the city, about 20 minutes or so, and we're sitting there smoking a joint, and we're just looking towards the city, like Indian Wells, where the conference is taking place. There's lights, and, like, you can see it all lit up, and there's a small mountains one on each side. Winds blowing, like, slow back and forth. It's really, I think it was in, I think that July they had it. I don't remember when that was. Anyways, nice night out, just perfect weather, light breeze. All of a sudden we just felt the breeze just stop. Like, all the little, any insect that was around chirping, or anything that was making noise, it just become dead silence. And you could just hear something above you, like whoosh, like, and it was, and after a second or two, like, the wind started blowing again. Couple seconds later, we're looking over there towards Indian Wells, like where the hotels, where the conference is, and we see the light. Me and my wife sitting out there, Ella, and we see a light light up like that. It blinks, another one blinks, and a line going across, and it's like like 10, 15 miles across. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
guesstimating. It's a massive distance across. And I'm like, oh my God, babe, that's a ship that those are the whole armada of ships that just went across us. And I'm like sitting over there processing it. And she's like, no, look at it. And the it like blinked down a line. And when it started coming back, it was holding itself in a line. Like
Oh, yeah.
it was drawing a white line across the sky. And then it come back, and that started back, and it started speeding up back and forth. And the length of it is just massive. It was just covering like
Yeah.
a massive area. And that was my mothership sighting. That was confirmed the next day. They were doing a CE5 at the conference. I don't know if there's video. I've spoke about this before. I don't have a video of it, but I, I know that there was a mothership sighting at the conference, and there was
Wow.
drones that come out of that mothership. But that mothership went over top of us, like, and it was the size of Texas, man. Like, it
Wow.
was huge,
Fascinating.
huge. And that was so that was a shared vision. Like
Mhm.
that was, and obviously I've seen ships before that, like had experiences before that. But it was very interesting to have that. That was a shared experience with my wife and
Yeah.
a couple hundred
Yeah.
other people at Contact in the Desert doing a C5
Yeah.
from two different points. And it was just amazing, that I'm pretty sure that we all collectively deep down inside ourselves at the conference agreed that, man, a mothership would be really cool tonight, like,
Yeah.
and
Well, sure. That's almost like the Phoenix Lights thing. 10,000 people saw it. And that's why I always say, I mean, who needs a ship that big, and why would you fly it 200 feet off the ground over Phoenix, Arizona? I mean, it's like they want you to go, whoa, what the heck is
yeah.
that? And everybody's sort of there, and the story runs around, and the more people talk about this kind of stuff, the more the consciousness rises. So let's sort of shut her down, because I've got to go and walk a dog here. And so let's go through the last couple things that you might want to talk about here, and we can do this again in the short future. And
Yeah. Yeah, I guess just circling
what?
back to what I spoke to before, just what do we do now? Like what does a listener do, or what does the
Yeah,
experiencer do? The experiencer just accepts, and doesn't try to figure out the whys and why nots,
yeah,
and just go into the feeling of what that message is. And you know, I think that the event that we're all feeling, I think we're about to have a mass event that we're all that's gonna be a paradigm shift for the collective. We're all gonna experience it together. And I think we're built, these sightings and people sharing their experiences. I think we're building the energy that's needed to manifest this paradigm shift.
if people want to get a hold of you, what do you do for people? Do you talk to people? Do you share stories? Do you have groups? Or talk a little bit about what you're doing in your present work?
Uh, Presently, I'm taking care of my son, being
Yeah,
being a father and a husband and everything. But that's why I've been doing a lot more podcasts lately. Trying to still balance out, and still trying to uh, complete my mission,
yeah,
and trying to help people expand. I do whatever's needed. People can reach out to me through sacredjourneyswithin.com. The website's behind me.
yeah,
Journeys is spelled with the IES, not with a Y. The only reason I know it's not spelling correctly if you're a proofreader, but that's the Y was already taken. That
yeah.
the spirits told me this is what I was supposed to name it. So it's been named for years, and this is what it is. But sacredjourneyswithin.com, that's the best way to get a hold of me. You can check out I got one link on there. You can check out all my past interviews, including yours and everybody else's. Then go to one spot and click on all those. They're all free.
Yeah.
Most of them are on YouTube. I do dream interpretation, where we have ceremonies coming up this year. Right now we're on hold. We're not scheduling anything because our new son, but we're going to start
Yeah.
scheduling ceremonies soon, with ayahuasca, San Pedro. Been working with that for years. And I'm starting to shift more away from the medicine ceremonies and get more into the consciousness and really spreading this consciousness through word, really. But we will be doing some ceremonies this year. I got a C5 that I'm planning right now, that's in the works. I'm going to be doing it in Crestone, Colorado. There's an a meteor impact crater that's there. I got a download the other day for a meditation. I'm going to lead the C5. I've invited Jimmy. Hopefully he can make it. I'm inviting you right now personally. If you can make it sometime this summer.
Yeah.
And we're working around your schedule, Grant. Like there's no
Yeah.
dates that are set in my mind, and whatever, if you can make it, it'd be great. But yeah, I got so the C5 meditation I'll share with you real quick that was given to me. I was showed to do a C5 in this meteor impact crater and talk about retrace the steps of the family tree of this meteor back to when it was a planet back a trillion years ago, and how and everything that had to happen for it to land right there. And through that meditation, it will take people outside their consciousness and go back to the origins of that meteor, and then we can open up space for the C5. This is the download that was given to me for this, so I know it's gonna be a good one, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow. Do you do a podcast? You'd be a good podcaster. I think you're.
no, I've been approached. Margie wants me to
Yeah.
go on X, but if I did that, I would have to dedicate. I would have to be like, hey, every Friday or something like that. For me, it's talking to different people
Yeah.
over. I get the message out to your fan base. I get the message out to Jimmy's fan base, and
Yeah.
they're on and on and on. But yeah, it's something
Yeah.
that's been approached to me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the second time that's been asked to me. Maybe
Yeah.
it's the universe asking
Yeah,
me.
I had the standard ones on the networks, but then it's down to 1 hour, and you got a break at the certain times and stuff. I just do, like, if you got an interesting guy, I always find it's interesting. So you can pick me or pick somebody and say, oh, I'd like to hear this guy's, and you get to ask questions,
Yeah,
and you can run it. Like, I haven't put up a podcast for a month. I've got maybe 5 or 6 that I did that I haven't put up yet, but I don't put them up regularly. Sometimes at one time I was putting them up every day for a couple of months, and then it just sort of became overwhelming. Now I put up one a month or something, but it's just you're a good communicator, and I think if you'd, and it's a good opportunity for you in terms of getting people you want to talk to and get their message and
yeah.
duplicate. But you're doing a lot of stuff, and that you got the point that you got the sun, and your life gets sort of overwhelming where you get too many plates up in the air, and you start dropping a couple of them.
Yeah, I don't want to overload myself. I don't want
Yeah.
to I want to balance out my life too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still living as Drew too,
Yeah.
I'm very much identify as the universe,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I also identify as Drew, and
Yeah.
I still have a life to enjoy, and I want to see what it looks like. I want my son to experience, my new son. I have other kids too, but I want my new son to grow up in that, because I think he really came here for this experience, like to
Yeah.
grow up with and to have someone to look to that has a balance that's, well,
Yeah.
trying to balance this
It's a good
tightrope
point.
in between spirituality and physicality.
It's a good point. Yeah, you got to have the balance. Otherwise you're not grounded, and people just you're way over people's heads. They're not really listening anyway. So you've got to
Yeah,
come
I
across
mean,
that.
I've definitely had visions of him holding them at conferences, and being up there at the podium and talk, and when
Yeah,
he's old enough and he's going to be sitting right here beside me, and
there you go.
hopefully still be here, and
Yeah, yeah,
we can have a conversation, all three of us, and
yeah,
he can talk about why he came, or whatever. But he
yeah.
come YD, I think YD 48 or something like that. It was a asteroid that passed by the Earth on
Okay,
January
okay.
11th,
Oh wow,
and it passed by the Earth within an hour of him coming here. And
wow.
I just had this vision of him riding this asteroid and like
Dropping them off.
jumping off on Earth, like just so much about him. You know, his a lot of people that know me know my connection to Osiris and everything. Know I start like one of my first times channeling was Osiris. I went
Yeah.
through that whole process too. I name him Hawk, but the hawk was my connection to the eagle spirit, and that was why we named him Hawk. But
Yeah.
after I named him Hawk, my wife had a vision, named him Hawk, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got this. The Osiris like chimed in. He just was laughing. I was like, oh man. I was like, I gotta go check. And I was like, okay. His son was connected to the hawk or falcon spirit. Like, and it's just there's so this that's another wow moment. You know,
Yeah.
that's just as deep to me as seeing a ship. You know, it's just because I know my experiences with Osiris. I know Osiris spoke through me and proved to me that it was a being speaking from another time and space, speaking through me. You know, he proved it, and it's just another wow moment, you know. And this whole thing is just so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm honored to be here in this time with you, Grant, and I'm honored for your friendship, and thank you so much. I have a YouTube channel. Do you mind me posting this on mine as
Sure.
well?
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's what it's about. I'm not here to. Everybody's got equal rights, and you may reach the person that you need to reach through that. So absolutely, anything that I have, anything I say, you can use. I have no problem with that.
I appreciate
And
your
I
friendship so much,
and
Grant.
I appreciate your coming on and sharing your wisdom. And let's do it again soon. We'll arrange it. I'll keep in touch with you.
I can't wait.
Okay,
Looking forward
Drew.
to it.
Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you later.
Big blessings, brother.
Namaste.
Namaste.